YouTube is currently on a demonetization spree, so I would like to ask you if you are able to share $1 on Patreon. Doing so will give you all kinds of great perks. Link is in the description below. Thank you very much. That's funny. Especially the ones in underwear fencing, reenactments and Renaissance fairs. That's where I should have went to do my research instead of spending the entire winter in Oxford with my research group making technical drawings for my professor and making stupid models without a budget out of popsicle sticks, electrical tape and magic markers and of course paper glue. Greetings traveler, I'm SnapJelly, and occasionally as a YouTuber you get a comment that is so stupid that it makes your brain hurt even thinking about it. And this may have been the dumbest comment, or comment chain actually, that I've ever received. But I wanted to share it with you guys because deep within the stupidity of this comment lies a message for all of you guys, for anybody that ever wants to learn anything about history or anything else in life. And that's a really important lesson. So I'm asking you guys to please bear with me through this, whatever it is, to learn this lesson, because it will help you in the long run. Now, I mean no disrespect to this guy, so I'm gonna censor his name very expertly and professionally, and I'm gonna call him Franz Bauer for now. Why not? Doesn't matter. Okay, let's begin. He commented on one of my videos about back scabbards. He commented, 1. U-shaped scabbards were developed to carry a sword pretty much of any length on your back. 2. People who use 2 swords at the same time tended to have short curved swords, and those draw just fine. And then he gave me a little link to this page right here, which is a page of Lichtshot. I don't know what that is, but it has a very small picture that I presume is from a movie. I don't know where it's from, it doesn't say where it's from. But, you know, a guy with 2 back scabbards that have what he calls a U-shaped opening, I guess. So I responded to his comment with, no. No, they weren't. Who told you that? Because he deserves a slap. Little edgy on my part. So Franz Bauer responded again. During the Crusades, the knights who died and their comrades retrieve their swords would often carry it on their backs, and a special scabbard was developed for that purpose. 1/4 of a scabbard in the bottom quarter of the scabbard was whole, and complete the rest of it was open at the top, and iron U-shaped clip was developed to hold the sword securely. All you have to do was draw the sword quarter way, and then you can lift it out of the scabbard. You're right on one point. For the most part, people did not do that. However, you have to take circumstance into account. When the sword needed to be attached to the back, ways were found to do this exactly the way it needed to be done. To which I responded with, source? Question mark? To which he responded again with, yes. Bear with me here. I responded again. What do you mean, yes? I'm asking you for your source. As in, where did you get this info? Franz Bauer responded, read in history book probably about the time you were born. Do you actually think that 12th century armorers didn't know what they were doing? I responded once more. I know a scabbard has nothing to do with armor, so you can leave the armorers out of it. I assumed that he meant armorers instead of armors. Also, quote, the history book, probably about the time you were born, is not a source, mate. Have you ever read a historical manual or manuscript? I'm asking you, where did you read it? The history book is not an answer. There are thousands of history books, but by your lack of a clear source, I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that you don't have a source. So Franz Bauer tried really hard to convince me after this. There is a difference between the equipment soldier or knight, as in nighttime, was armed with before he went to battle in the equipment he returned with, ask any soldier, even and modern day one. Okay. Most of your knowledge comes from how armies were equipped officially. but you have no idea how I, mercenary company, would be equipped. You have to do research in that particular area. I recommend Oxford University Library, that's where I did my research. In modern terms, an armorer is a member of a military or police force who works in an armory and maintains and repairs small arms and weapon items, with some duties resembling those of a civilian gunsmith. Armorers have the rank of a craftsman. Great story. So I was absolutely convinced after this, naturally, so I responded with, "Great, now if you could give me that source I asked for, that would be nice." Also, FYI, mercenary armies also had equipment and skill regulations. In real life, I mean. In the movies you watch to get your quote-unquote info, they don't, but in real life they did. So that kind of triggered it. I mean, it's kind of my fault for being, being so edgy, but this kind of, I feel like this kind of made him angry a little bit. So he responded with, "What makes you an expert? Many years of research have you done into this subject? Have you ever made a scabbard or a sword or a single piece of armor? The reason so, if you examples of this remain, is because they will put together on the battlefield. We're doing war and immediately afterwards were discarded." Okay, so I responded with, "2 clicks and you'll find my social media pages, with all answers to the questions you just asked, but I'll link them for you to make it easy." And I just left 2 links to my Instagram and my Facebook page that have quite a bit of pictures and such of me doing all kinds of historical stuff. You could have also clicked on my channel and figured it out, but you're already there, so I'm guessing I won't have to link you to that. Now about my question. Do you have that source yet? Just typing out the source would have been a lot less trouble, mate. I also don't get what you're so upset about. People asking for your source when you make claims about history is a pretty normal thing, since many people use movies and video games to get their info, or just make stuff up themselves. So being able to state your source is really handy. Also, it's not that hard. Here, I'll help you on your way. Quote, "I read it in ... Just fill in the dots with the name of the book or website where you read it. I'll find it." So he presumably clicked on my social media pages and he wrote this. "That's funny. Especially the ones in underwear fencing, reenactments and Renaissance fairs. That's where I should have went to do my research instead of spending the entire winter in Oxford with my research group making technical drawings for my professor and making stupid models without a budget out of popsicle sticks, electrical tape and magic markers and of course paper glue. I might actually still have one." To which I responded with, "Alright, great. Can I get that source now or what?" So Franz Bauer answered, "You actually think I remember the name of a book from 25 years ago, and I think it was more of a diary anyway. You try remember the name of a book from 25 years ago." Now I'll ask you a question. Where would I, a knight, see soldiers wearing swords on their back around the time of the Crusades? Question number 2. Where would a knight keep a backup sword available doing battle without danger in his horse? Without danger in his horse. I responded again. Well, if you would have just said that from the beginning, this would have been a lot easier. Yet, I gotta say that without a source, I cannot take such bold claims as fact. Now to answer your questions. I read the first question a bit wrong, gotta admit. I thought he said, where would you see a knight wearing swords on their back around the time of the Crusades? Which is not quite what he asked, but alright. Now to answer your questions. 1. You would never see a knight wear a sword on their back anywhere. There are no recordings of knights ever wearing their swords on their back, with exception of that one mysterious book/diary from 25 years ago that you conveniently forgot the name of. Hence my interest in the book. Such a piece of info would change a lot about what we know about our history. 2. A knight would keep their quote-unquote backup sword, aka their only sword since they only carry one, having a spear as their main weapon, in their scabbard on their hip. On TV and in video games you often see people carry their swords in sword rings, leaving the blade exposed, but historically this was never done. Scabbards were always closed, so the horse is not in any harm. To back up my claim, I'll link you to some images of the Bayeux tapestry, which was made in the 11th century only a few years before the First Crusade. It depicts various armored soldiers, both mounted and on foot with their scabbards on their hip but none on their back. So, and I just linked a few pictures there from the tapestry that shows various swords in and out of scabbards. We're almost there. We're almost at the end. He responded with, "Those tapestries are about as reliable as movies are today. One, the person that made the tapestry was not there. Two, apparently you also can't read because you were answering questions I didn't ask." He's right, I did. 1. Where would I, a knight, see soldiers wearing swords on their back around the time of the Crusades? I'll give you a clue. They wore 2 swords for the simple reason that they believed that shields were for wimps and they were not afraid to die. P.S. All those knights seemed to be wearing chainmail, not full body armor, and it was the armor that made drawing a sword from the back impractical. They are wearing chainmail because during the First Crusade there was no full body armor yet. Also, shields are for wimps. I would ask him for the source of where he got the idea that people thought shields were for wimps, but it's probably from some book diary he read like 25 years ago and can't remember the name of, so I didn't. He also said something else. Here's an easy experiment you can do yourself. Get a long ladder and get a shield strap, your sword, and start climbing it. When you get to the top, keep your shield in front of you and draw a sword. Presumably he would want me to try that to experience that it is difficult. That's what I assume. He doesn't say why he wants me to try it. He just said that it's an experiment that I should do. However, to that I will say, your conclusion is having a shield and climbing up a ladder is impractical, or not easy at least. So the solution of the knight was to not carry a shield at all. Okay, I would say though that it's not easy to climb a ladder with your weapons, but besieging a castle simply wasn't easy. It was not comfortable, so that's my answer. And you cannot cover yourself completely with your shield when you're climbing up a ladder, but you know, the solution to that would be having your shield on your back, climbing up the ladder, and as soon as you're up the ladder, get your shield off your back. But your solution would be not carry a shield at all and never have any protection. It's true that if you have your shield on your back and you climb up the ladder, you're not protected by the shield. But then as soon as you're up the ladder, you make it up the ladder, or if you're not up the ladder yet, you're down and you're protecting yourself from arrows, you have something to protect yourself with. Right? But like I said, it's probably futile to ask you for your source where you got the information that knights would carry 2 swords. This is the end of the chain, by the way. I did not respond to this anymore because at this point I realized that he is a lost cause. That no matter what I say, he is just gonna believe his own fantasies. So here's a lesson for you guys. I get comments like this, usually not quite as bad, but like this a lot, right? And on the other hand, I also get a lot of people asking me questions, and many of those people that ask me questions apologize before they even ask the question, because they're afraid that whatever they're asking is a stupid question. And I always tell people to not apologize for asking questions. I mean, there are stupid questions, don't get me wrong, but when you are asking questions, you want to learn something, right? You are aware of something that you're not aware of, and you're asking somebody in the hopes that they can give you some insight, right? That's the way you learn stuff. And I don't think you ever have to apologize for asking a question, regardless of how stupid it is, because you are trying to learn something. But if you're like this guy, and you get your information from what I think is a movie, or you just make it up yourself, you have no source, nothing to back it up, or you went to Oxford, presumably as a window cleaner, but I doubt you went to school there, and then you use whatever imaginary thing you came up with, and you state that as fact, undeniable fact, and anything else that people tell you is just disputed because you have this thing you made up in your mind with no source, you don't know where you got the info from, you just believe it, right, and you dispute anything else because that is what you believe, then you're never gonna get anywhere. Alright? You can't know everything. You don't have to apologize for not knowing something. It's alright to not know something. There's plenty of things that I don't know. But when I make something up, or when I make a conclusion based on prior experiences without having an actual source for the thing I'm stating, like saying that I assume that such and such happened because of other things that I know, then I'm not gonna dispute anything that somebody might know about it because I don't have any sources for it. I just made it up. That was my conclusion. That is not undeniable fact. So the lesson that I want you guys to take from this is don't be this guy. You need to get your information from anywhere that you can. But a smart way to start, if you want to start learning about history or swords or anything actually, a smart way to start is realizing where you got your information from. Because our brains work in such a way that if we have holes in our memory, vague spots, we just fill it in ourselves. Right? That's what our brain does with anything that we have. So a good way to start is trying to realize where you got your information from. If you believe something, why do you believe that thing? Did you see it in a movie? Did you see it in a video game? Does it just make sense to you? And why does it just make sense to you? What do you base that on? What experience do you have? Right? And if it's somebody else gave you that information, is that person a reliable source? Where did that person get his information from? I mean, he might say that he saw it in a documentary, but what documentary? Did he really see a documentary? Did he just make it up? Because that stuff happens all the time when I go to fairs or wherever people tell the greatest stories, and then you ask them where did they got the info from, and they can't tell you. So it came from here, from their head, but they're stating it as fact. Those are things you gotta have to be aware of. And the best way to start learning about anything is by being aware of that you're doing it yourself, right? Be aware of where you get the information from. Is the information that you know from a reliable source? Why do you think this? Where did you read it? Where did you get this info from? That's a good way to start. So that's the lesson I want to teach you guys today. Don't apologize for not knowing something, but if you think you know something, think about why do you think you know that thing? Where did you get it from? Who told you? If you stuck around this long, you might as well subscribe and also follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. And thank you for joining my quest, and I hope you'll join me in the next one. Bye guys.